Imagine this. You find yourself in the middle of a heated debate. Your heart is racing. Your mind is working overtime, crafting the perfect response. Every word you say feels like a strike. Every sentence a counterattack. You're not just talking, you're battling, determined to prove that you are right. But here's the thing. The other person is doing the exact same thing. Neither of you is listening, only waiting for a chance to retaliate. And then, something unexpected happens. A figure steps in, not to take sides, not to hand you the perfect argument, but to whisper a single, unsettling truth in your ear. You've already lost. What does that mean? You're standing your ground, defending your beliefs. How could that be a defeat? Because, according to this figure, the moment you allow yourself to be drawn into a fight for dominance, you've already surrendered something greater, your control. True power, he argues, doesn't come from winning arguments. It comes from something far more subtle and far more effective. So what is this hidden power? And why does silence often carry more weight than words? Let's dive into the philosophy behind this idea and uncover the silent strategy that grants true influence. Most people assume power comes from having the last word, proving others wrong, and asserting dominance in conversation. But one of the greatest philosophical minds in history, Friedrich Nietzsche, had a radically different perspective. He saw power not in words, but in control. Why do people argue in the first place? Have you ever stopped to consider the real reason behind heated debates? Nietzsche would say that most arguments aren't about truth, but about something deeper, something psychological. Ego preservation. People argue because admitting they are wrong feels like losing a part of themselves. The mind resists this at all costs. Power struggles. Many debates are not about facts or logic, but about control. Who dictates the flow of conversation? Who appears more dominant? Social validation. Some argue not because they truly believe in their point, but because they crave recognition, wanting to appear smart, confident, or strong. Nietzsche saw these behaviors as signs of weakness. He believed that those who react emotionally in arguments are not in control. They're being controlled. The moment you allow someone to provoke you, you've already lost. Nietzsche's famous concept of the will to power is often misunderstood. It's not about brute force. It's about shaping reality to your will. And often, this doesn't require words at all. Sometimes, the greatest power is the ability to remain silent, to refuse to react. This is where Nietzsche's ideal individual, the Übermensch, comes in. The Übermensch is not easily swayed by emotion or ego. He doesn't argue for the sake of winning or proving a point. Instead, he carefully chooses when to engage and when to remain silent, knowing that true power is not in speaking. It's in controlling the entire interaction. Picture a meeting where two people are locked in a heated argument. One is loud, aggressive, insistent on proving their point. The other remains calm, composed, listening more than speaking. They don't get drawn into an emotional back and forth. But when they do finally speak, their words are deliberate, well-placed, and shift the entire conversation. Who truly holds the power here? Nietzsche would argue that the one who stays in control, who doesn't let emotion dictate their reaction, always wins in the long run. Silence, when used strategically, is not weakness. It's a psychological tool. It forces others to reveal more about themselves, makes them second-guess their own words, and creates tension. And tension is powerful because it makes people uncomfortable. The Übermensch doesn't just avoid unnecessary arguments. He uses silence as a weapon. A pause, a moment of restraint, a single well-timed response. These can turn the tide of an entire discussion. This is why Nietzsche's idea of power is not about fighting. It's about controlling the battlefield before the fight even begins. History is filled with examples of this principle in action. Socrates, Steve Jobs, and Miyamoto Musashi all understood that true power doesn't come from talking the most, but from knowing how to wield silence. Socrates mastered the art of winning without direct confrontation. He never engaged in shouting matches. Instead, he used the Socratic method, a form of questioning that made people expose their own contradictions. Imagine a politician boasting about his wisdom. Instead of outright challenging him, Socrates would simply ask, "What is wisdom?" The politician, eager to prove his intellect, would define it, but each follow-up question from Socrates would unravel the definition. Before long, the politician would realize he had no real understanding of what he claimed to know. Socrates didn't need to tell people they were wrong. He led them to see it themselves. Steve Jobs, on the other hand, mastered the art of controlled conflict. He didn't argue over every detail. He chose his battles carefully. When Apple engineers resisted the idea of a full touchscreen iPhone, Jobs didn't engage in endless debate. He guided them toward the realization that a touchscreen wasn't just possible, but inevitable. He didn't tell people what to think. He led them to believe it was their idea all along. And then there's Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai who won most of his battles before the fight even began. His most famous duel was against Sasaki Kojiro, a feared master swordsman known for his speed. Musashi didn't challenge him head-on. Instead, he arrived hours late, intentionally provoking Kojiro's anger. By the time the duel began, Kojiro was so blinded by rage that he made fatal mistakes. Musashi won effortlessly. He understood a fundamental truth. If your opponent is emotional, they are already weak. The common thread? Power through strategic silence. These figures didn't waste energy on meaningless arguments. They controlled the flow of conversation, dictated the terms of engagement, and understood that true power isn't in words, but in influence. Now, ask yourself, why do we feel the need to argue, to defend our ideas, even when the argument is going nowhere? Most people believe arguments are about truth. They're not. Arguments are about power. The more you argue, the more you reveal your insecurities, your emotional triggers, your need to be right. Nietzsche understood this deeply. His concept of the will to power wasn't about brute strength. It was about self-mastery. The one who controls their own reaction controls the entire situation. Modern psychology supports this. Studies show that people who stay calm and composed in conflicts are more persuasive. Why? Because humans associate calmness with confidence. The most powerful individuals are not those who talk the most, but those who make every word count. So, the next time you feel the urge to argue, stop, observe, ask yourself, am I speaking out of emotion, or am I controlling the situation? True power is not in the words you say. It's in the ones you choose not to say. But does this mean you should always stay silent? Not at all. Power isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about mastering it. The greatest thinkers and leaders in history didn't run from arguments. They chose their battles wisely. If a debate sharpens your thinking, pushes you to grow, or shifts power in your favor, engage. But if it's just a battle of egos, step back. Silence itself can be a power move. Imagine if you only had a limited number of words left to speak in your life. Would you waste them in a pointless argument? Or would you wield them like a weapon, choosing them carefully, making each one count? That's the essence of true power. Because in the end, the strongest voice in any room isn't the loudest. It's the one that speaks with purpose. That if you want more insights on philosophy, psychology, and power, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay sharp. Stay powerful.